The Commodore died, a failed calculation. 1 microsecond he stood 5 feet 10 inches tall, the next he condensed. A dense sphere of bone and blood occupied his space. Silk uniform crushed, ribcage folded, total density achieved. This snap of the universe corrected a decimal point error. Final payment arrived. 12 hours earlier, the debt began on the deck of the Centurion. Amber gold replaced the ocean in the Shattered Mana Strait. Raw magic whipped into waves 50 feet high. Silence defined the Centurion's movement. On the main deck, the nobility danced. Crystal chandeliers hung heavy from the masts. Hundreds of white uniforms rotated on the mahogany. Not a single drop of wine spilled. The deck remained level. Gravity obeyed the command. Miracles required engineering. Physics demanded a lie. Beneath the mahogany, darkness breathed. Caelum knelt. Copper circuits mapped his skin. Gold longitude lines pulsed in his sightless eyes. His fingers gripped the neural cables. Every wave slammed the hull. Impact surged through his frame. Caelum absorbed the shock. He buffered the kinetic energy and converted the ocean's momentum into heat within his marrow. Obedience became pathological. Caelum calculated torque, adjusted tension, and held the ship together with his spine. Smoking scales filled the crawl space. Charred meat scented the air. Caelum did not flinch. He functioned. The music stopped. Leather boots thudded above. The hatch opened. Commodore Valerius looked down. Reflection defined his polished boots. No dust touched his golden epaulets. He held a glass of crimson wine. The liquid stood frozen. "Come out, you wretched wire," Valerius commanded. Caelum disconnected. He crawled out. Failure took his legs. Hands black from electrical burns gripped the deck. Steam drifted from his shoulders. He stood before the crowd. "Look at this," Valerius said. A gloved finger pointed. "The Admiralty Physics Compensation Act states a truth. Power belongs to the commander. The load belongs to the slave. You are not a man. You are a biological fuse. You exist to suffer so I can dance." Valerius stepped closer. A tiny vibration shook the surface of his wine. A single ripple appeared. Rage twisted the Commodore's face. "You are slipping, slave," Valerius hissed. "My wine moved. That violates the contract." He raised the glass. He did not drink. He poured the cold red wine over Caelum's burnt face. Liquid hissed against scorched skin. Caelum did not blink, his gold eyes fixed on the Commodore's feet. He saw the vector lines. He saw the invisible debt. Every joule of energy Caelum absorbed stayed in the ledger. He had optimized the ship's keel as a massive capacitor. Every insult added weight. Every suppressed wave became a pound of pressure locked beneath the Commodore's boots. "I apologize, Commodore," Caelum said. His voice ground like metal. "I will ensure the next 1,000 miles remain smooth." "Good," Valerius sneered. He kicked Caelum's charred ribs. "Get back in your hole. We are entering the heart of the tsunami. I want zero vibration. If I feel a tremor, I will peel your nervous system out. It will become a deck mop. Remember the act, slave. All consequences belong to the commander. I have decided there will be no consequences today." Caelum crawled back into the dark. He plugged the needles into his neck. Pain became a white wall. He ignored it. He calculated. The debt reached 10 million tons of kinetic force. It coiled beneath the command tower. The Centurion plunged into the heart of the tsunami. 12 million tons of liquid magic hammered the mahogany hull. The sky turned a bruised purple. Massive waves, 50 feet of churning amber gold, collided with the vessel's flanks. Below deck, vibration consumed Caelum's bones. White heat raced through his copper circuits. He channeled the ocean's tantrum into his spine. Every impact traveled through the masts, into the hull, and directly into his marrow. Pressure defined the environment. The liquid sea possessed a viscosity 3 times that of water. It squeezed the ship like a massive fist. Within the dark crawl space, absolute heat filled the air. Ozone and scorched marrow scented the stagnant atmosphere. Caelum monitored the internal sensors with his blind, gold-mapped eyes. Stress on the main keel reached 98%. Total structural failure hovered seconds away. The ship existed as a balloon ready to pop. held together only by the frantic recalculations of a dying slave. On the surface, serenity reigned. The chandeliers remained still. On the command bridge, Commodore Valerius stood. A smirk defined his face. Power radiated from his posture. He felt invincible. He commanded the elements. Dry boots, still wine. The nobility laughed and toasted to his name. 5 feet below his heels, a man screamed in silence. Valerius saw only his own reflection in the polished brass of the compass. He ignored the groaning of the deep wood. He ignored the smell of ozone rising from the vents. "This is the power of the Blue Warrant," Valerius shouted. His voice echoed across the deck. "The sea bows. The elements recognize their master. I am the center of the world." He turned to his first officer. The man stood pale. His eyes remained fixed on the crimson pressure gauges. Sweat dripped from his chin. "Sir," the officer stammered, "gravitational shear exceeds the safety limits. We carry too much momentum. If we do not vent the kinetic energy now, the hull will crystallize. Physics dictates a release of pressure. The ship cannot sustain this load." The Commodore backhanded him. The slap echoed louder than the thunder. "Physics is for the poor," Valerius hissed. He adjusted his white silk gloves. "I pay the anchor to handle the physics. I pay the anchor to suffer. If the ship stands, the anchor has more to give. He is a tool. Tools do not have limits. Only incompetent operators have limits." He walked to the voice tube. He pulled the brass lever with a violent snap. "Listen, you copper-skinned dog," Valerius barked into the tube. "I see the capital. The king watches through far-sight crystals. He demands a miracle. He demands the saint's gyre in the center of this storm. Perform the rotation. Now." Caelum's voice returned. A wet, rattling sound. "Broken glass in the lungs," Commodore, Caelum whispered. "Structural stress reached 9.8 million tons of potential energy. The Compensation Act requires a balanced load. A 720-degree rotation at this velocity will exceed the ship's mass. The backlash will be absolute. The keel will melt." Valerius laughed, a high, shrill sound of pure arrogance. "Then absorb it, slave. That is the fear of a coward. You claim it is impossible because you are weak. You fear heat. I am the commander. My will is the law. I order the Gaia. Full mana injection, double the speed, triple the torque. Turn this ship into a god's needle." Caelum stared at the glowing wires fused to his arms. He saw the vector maps pulsing in his mind. He saw the mathematics of disaster. The Commodore did not just ask for a maneuver. He asked for a physical impossibility. He stacked a mountain of lead on a single toothpick. "As you wish, Commodore," Caelum said. Gold eyes flashed with a sudden icy clarity. "I will optimize the rotation. I will ensure zero vibration reaches the command tower. Every ounce of the backlash will be redirected. Every pound of pressure will find its proper legal home." He worked. Fingers moved across the neural interface. He did not vent the pressure. He did not release the heat. Instead, he used the ship's gravity plating to create a magnetic bottle. He sucked all the structural fatigue and kinetic debt from the 300-foot vessel. He pulled the agony of the wood and the screaming of the metal into a single focal point. The point sat exactly 6 inches beneath Valerius's standing position. On the surface, the nobles cheered. The Centurion accelerated. It blurred. The golden sea parted. The ship began to spin. A 720-degree spiral in the heart of a hurricane ripped through reality. Gravity failed. The world became a kaleidoscope of amber and shadow. Valerius stood tall. He raised a glass of wine. He looked at the nobles. "See," Valerius shouted. "Zero vibration. Absolute perfection. The anchor's warnings were lies. I have mastered the storm. I have mastered the sea." He basked in the glory. He did not notice the floorboards beneath him turning red. He did not notice the air around his feet warping. He did not notice the rest of the ship had become strangely light, weightless. The Centurion no longer carried its own weight. Caelum decoupled the physical mass from the ocean. The ship became a ghost. Commodore Valerius became the only physical object left in the universe capable of paying the debt. Every ounce of the 12 million tons of momentum shifted. The law of the sea searched for a signatory. It found Valerius. The debt reached 12 million tons of kinetic force. It moved at 500 miles per hour. It searched for a home. The final rotation began. The Centurion tilted. The world turned upside down. But Valerius felt nothing. He saw only the king's palace. He felt like the owner of the world. He was a dead man walking. The Saint's gyre reached its 720th degree. The ocean screamed. Defying the weight of the world, the flagship ripped through the golden foam. On the bridge, Commodore Valerius stood. Godhood defined his posture. His wineglass remained high. His white gloves stayed pristine. He looked out at the chaos and saw only his own reflection. He did not hear the deep, resonant tolling from beneath the waves. The abyssal admiralty arrived. From the depths rose a giant spectral set of scales. It stretched miles wide. Bone-white structures, forged from 1,000 forgotten shipwrecks, breached the surface. These scales did not measure gold. They measured the displacement of suffering. They measured the unpaid debt of kinetic force. Black static cracked the air. Silence fell over the sea as the ancient law prepared to collect. Commodore Valerius laughed. He pointed at the palace on the horizon. "Do you see the king?" Valerius shouted. His voice possessed the edge of madness. "He witnesses the birth of a legend. He witnesses the master of the tides." He turned to the voice tube. He prepared one last insult for the slave who had made this miracle possible. "Anchor!" Valerius barked. "Final stabilization. Stop the ship instantly. No drift, no vibration. I command the world to see that I conquered inertia. I want this vessel frozen in time." Caelum sat in the dark. Violet light consumed the copper circuits on his skin. His nervous system hummed with the frequency of a dying star. He felt the heavy, cold gaze of the abyssal admiralty. They waited for a signature. They waited for a payer. The ledger remained open. "The Saint's gyre is complete," Caelum whispered into the tube. A cold mechanical chime defined his voice. "The rotation was perfect. The inertia is absolute. The debt stands at 12,400,000 tons of force." "Good!" Valerius screamed. "Now swallow it. Take the load and rot in your hole." Caelum closed his gold eyes. The needles in his neck pulsed one last time. He felt the heat of the Commodore's arrogance radiating through the metal ship. "The Maritime Physics Compensation Act states a truth," Caelum said. The words echoed through every speaker on the ship. "The commander is the source of the command. The slave is the buffer. But a buffer is a choice. Responsibility follows the signature." Caelum reached up. He grabbed the neural cables with his burnt fingers. He felt the vibration of 12 million tons of momentum fighting to be released. "I choose to stop buffering," Caelum said. "I resign my position as the anchor." Valerius froze. The wineglass in his hand vibrated. It did not shake, it shrieked. A high-pitched whistle emanated from the floorboards beneath the Commodore's feet. The air warped. Heat surged through the mahogany. "What are you doing?" Valerius roared. "You are a piece of equipment. You are a wire. You cannot resign." "I am the wire holding back the mountain," Caelum replied. "I am letting go." Caelum ripped the cables from his neck. Tearing flesh sounded beneath the electrical discharge. Blue sparks flooded the crawl space. The glowing circuits on his skin went dark. For the first time in 10 years, Caelum felt light, empty, no longer a battery, a man. The system recalculated. The abyssal admiralty shifted its scales. The spectral pointer moved with the speed of lightning. It searched the ship for the legal origin of the Saint's gyre. It bypassed the empty shell of the anchor. It ignored the terrified nobles. It locked onto the only man who signed the blue warrant. It locked onto the source of the force. The debt had no home. It found Valerius. The Commodore felt it first in his feet. The floorboards became a conductor. The invisible kinetic force Caelum had stored for years poured upward. This was not a physical blow. This was a transfer of reality. The universe demanded balance. Valerius's veins glowed. Violet light pulsed beneath his skin. His white silk gloves smoked. His eyes turned the color of overcharged copper. He tried to speak, he tried to scream. His lungs compressed under the equivalent of 100 ocean depths. The wineglass in his hand vanished. No glass shattered. The gravity surge crushed the vessel into a single atom of dust. Caelum stood up in the dark. He walked toward the ladder. He did not look back at the burning cables. He looked up at the hatch. The universe groaned as it balanced the books. He felt the Centurion begin to settle. The Saint's gyre prepared to stop. Valerius was the only break left in the world. The Centurion struck the limit of the Saint's gyre. 12,400,000 tons of momentum found its target. The flagship remained a ghost. The mahogany hull did not splinter. The crystal chandeliers did not sway. The mass of the vessel decoupled from reality. Every ounce of that kinetic debt transferred to the legal signatory. Commodore Valerius stood on the command bridge. He tried to scream. The air around him became a vacuum. Internal pressure collided with the external weight of the ocean. His voice died. He condensed. 12 million tons of force hit his ankles. The polished leather of his boots did not tear. They fused with his skin. His shins vanished. Bone marrow crystallized and collapsed. A wet metallic pop echoed. His height dropped from 5 feet 10 inches to 4 feet in 1 millisecond. The Abyssal Admiralty ignored noble bloodlines. It recognized only the equation. Valerius was the source. Valerius was the only break. The next 5 million tons hammered his torso. His ribcage imploded. The heart and lungs occupied a space no larger than a grapefruit. Violet light turned a blinding white. Heat liquefied the air. The smell of ozone and burning marrow filled the bridge. Caelum emerged from the hatch. He moved with the slow, rhythmic grace of a predator. He was no longer hunched. Cool copper skin, clear gold eyes. He ignored the screaming nobles and the terrified officers. He walked toward the center of the collapse. He stopped 5 feet from the Commodore. Valerius was a twisting mass of white silken meat. He was 3 feet tall, then 2 feet, then 1. 12 million tons of force ground him into a single point of infinite density. The sound, a high-pitched mechanical whine of a universe correcting an error. Help! A frequency wheezed from the center of the white light. I will give you the ship. The gold. Caelum looked at the shrinking mass. He felt the satisfaction of a balanced ledger. You already gave me the command, Commodore, Caelum said. You gave me the responsibility. According to the Act, you gave me the right to survive the load. The final 6 million tons arrived. A sharp, singular crack echoed to the horizon. The universe closed a file. In the center of the bridge, a tiny black sphere remained. A flesh singularity. It held the mass of a mountain and the remains of a man. It warped the light. The white silk, the golden epaulets, the blue warrant, everything condensed into that single grain of debt. Caelum reached out. He adjusted the gravity plating on the bridge. The black marble rolled across the mahogany floor toward the edge of the ship. The nobles watched in frozen horror. The marble fell. It hit the golden sea. No splash occurred. The singularity sliced through the water and sank toward the bottom of the Shattered Mana Strait. It carried the Commodore's soul into the crushing dark. The Centurion shivered. The debt was paid. The ship regained its physical reality with a heavy thud. The golden waves went still. The hurricane vanished. The sun broke through the clouds. The flagship sat perfectly level. Caelum walked to the command chair. He sat down. He poured a glass of wine. The liquid remained perfectly still. Not a single ripple. Who is in command? An officer whispered. His voice trembled. Caelum took a sip of the wine. He looked at the horizon. The physics are in command, Caelum said, and I am the only one who knows how to talk to them. The royal harbour of Aethelgard occupied a forest of white marble and golden flags. 10,000 citizens lined the docks. Upon a floating throne sat the king. Enchanted quartz lenses allowed him to scan the horizon. He waited for a hero. He waited for the return of the primary ether. He waited for the glory of Commodore Valerius. Instead, silence entered the harbour. The Centurion glided across the water without producing a wake. No spray touched the hull. The massive vessel moved as a physical anomaly. It did not slow. It did not drift. Precisely 1 inch from the royal pier, the movement ceased. The laws of inertia failed to sway a single rope. Not a single noble on the deck stumbled. A suffocating quiet fell over the harbour. Royal inquisitors armoured in black and silver marched onto the pier. Grand Duke Malthus led the formation. He had signed Valerius's commission. He had authorized the impossible. Rage twisted the Duke's features as he looked up at the command bridge. "Where is the Commodore?" Malthus roared. "Why does a slave occupy the throne of a royal officer?" Caelum did not stand. He did not bow. He remained in the velvet chair. The wine glass stayed level in his scarred hand. Gold eyes looked down at the Grand Duke with the cold weight of the abyss. "Commodore Valerius fulfilled his contract," Caelum said. His voice bypassed the acoustics of the harbour. He took full responsibility for the voyage. Every ounce of it. "Lies!" Malphas screamed. He pointed a silver blade at the ship. "Guards! Board that vessel! Arrest this freak for murder!" He sabotaged a flagship of the Crown. 50 Inquisitors charged the gangplank. Their boots thundered against the wood. They reached the deck and levelled mana pikes at Caelum's throat. Caelum did not flinch. He reached into the pocket of the Commodore's discarded coat and pulled out the blue warrant. Valerius's blood signature pulsed on the parchment. "Under the Maritime Physics Compensation Act, Section 9, Caelum recited, the commander functions as the soul of the ship. The anchor functions as the body. If the commander's negligence destroys the body, the soul pays the debt to the Abyssal Admiralty." The parchment hit the pier at Malphas's feet. "The debt reached 12,400,000 tons, Caelum continued. "I offered the Commodore a chance to vent the pressure. He refused. He ordered me to hold the load so he could dance. I held it until the Saint's gyre. Then I resigned." The Grand Duke's face turned translucent. He had written the clauses to protect the nobility from liability. He never imagined a slave would use physics as a guillotine. "According to the law of mass balance," Caelum said. Standing up, he towered over the Inquisitors. "The Centurion no longer belongs to the Crown. It belongs to the entity that survived the transition. The Abyssal Admiralty already performed the clearing." Harbour water began to boil. From the foam rose the spectral scales of the deep. These bone-white structures remained visible to everyone in the capital. The pointer bypassed Caelum and locked onto the empty space where Valerius had stood. Then it shifted. It focused on the Grand Duke. He was the guarantor of the mission. A low, mechanical hum emanated from the stones beneath Malphas's feet. Violet light flickered around his ankles. "The debt remains unpaid," Caelum whispered. "The Commodore was the primary signatory. The Grand Duke is the guarantor. Physics demands a second signature." Malphas fell to his knees. 100,000 tons of structural fatigue pressed into his shoulders. The phantom weight of the keel folded his spine. "Save me!" Malphas begged the king. "Stop the law!" The king remained still. He understood the equation. Interference would suck the entire harbour into a physical vacuum. He watched as the Duke's armour crumpled. Metal plates flattened. The Duke's height decreased by 2 feet in a single second. The sound, a rapid series of bone-shattering cracks. Caelum walked to the edge of the deck. He looked at the terrified crowd. "From this day, the Amber Gold Sea has new rules," Caelum announced. "No more buffers, no more biological fuses. If you sail these waters, you carry your own load. You bleed for every knot of speed." He raised the wine glass. "Or you stay on the shore and watch me rule the horizon." Caelum turned to the helm. He engaged the primary mana drive. The Centurion hummed with the efficiency of a world-ending machine. The ship moved. It backed away from the pier, leaving the screaming Duke and the stunned king behind. Caelum steered the flagship toward the open ocean. He moved toward the heart of the sea where physics remained raw and debts were absolute. He was no longer a wire. He was the storm. The sea attained a perfect, beautiful balance.
Watching Valerius spend his entire life looking down on others only to end up as a 1-inch marble at the bottom of the ocean is the most satisfying bit of physical downsizing I've ever seen. If you were the anchor, would you have cut the connection the moment he poured that wine? Or would you have waited for the debt to reach 12 million tons just to watch him collapse? I actually spent an hour researching the theoretical density of a flesh singularity just to make sure the physics felt as brutal as the revenge.